Isabella. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to go over some hitting characteristics as well as 3D analysis and also some comments on your movement screen. Thanks for allowing me to do this, and hopefully you find it helpful. So when we do the screen, we look for 12 characteristics, 6 on the face-on view, and then 6 on the down-the-line view. And the first thing that I look for is any evidence of a sway, too much movement away from the target, slide, any movement or too much movement towards the target, and also hanging back to make sure you have proper weight shift. So we draw those lines there, and basically we kind of want you in the lines. So on the way back, you can see no evidence of you going too far over to the right. Looks like you good loading onto that right leg. And then what we want to see is you close out this side here. And so we're looking for a good weight shift towards the target. You're also rotating your hips around and going there. So no evidence of slide, sway, or hanging back. Next, what we look for is if you're casting or scooping. All right, so what we do is we take it to the top of your backswing, all right, here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an angle between your hands, hands and your shoulder and here. And so that's 73 degrees. And what we want is for you to actually compress that angle. So as you get to the point of arms parallel, we actually want that angle smaller. So at the top, you got 73. At this point, let's see what you had. Shoulder, you can see you have 81. So it shows that you're releasing the club a little early here. And so at this point, when your arm is parallel, we actually want it less than 73 degrees. And so we would say that you're casting. So it's like if you're fishing, you're casting those wrists early. And sometimes that can lead to cupping. And so as we have you go all the way through, so again, 73 there, we want to see this angle less at this point, and you're 81 degrees. And sometimes that can lead to you scooping. And so if we see a break in that left wrist, which we start to see here, here, and here, see if I can go back one frame. There might be a little cupping in this area where we see the curve of the wrist, all right? And so that is a compensation or a corrective action from the casting piece, okay? So that'll be something, we can send you some drills to work on that. Let me see, is there anything else on this view that I'm missing? And then we also look for evidence of chicken winging, so that left arm on the follow through, nice and straight there, so looking good. All right, next I'm going to take you to the down the line view. And we're going to go here. And let me zoom you in a little bit. All right, so a couple things we look for is any evidence of a C posture or S posture, meaning just too much curvature in the low back. And I'm not seeing any there. Next thing we look for is if you have a flat shoulder plane, which you clearly do not. You can see good attack angle there. Next thing we look for, what we call loss of posture. Let me have you go back. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line head, waist, knee, ankle. Sure why it does that to me there. And so the key thing we want is throughout the swing, for the most part, stay within the lines. I would probably say, and we do see folks dip, and that's perfectly fine. And so for the most part, you're staying within that line. What we see usually for females is initially that right leg is straight, but when it comes on the downswing, they do tend to get a little bit more bend. And so my only thing I would say, you're pretty good, maybe like right at the top here, you start to come out of it a little bit. And I'll show you on the 3D graph what we're seeing there, and that's partly related to your coil. And so you turn your body, and then at the very end, there's a little additional coil, and you may be slightly coming out of posture when you do that coil, but you do seem to correct on the way down, but we don't want you having to correct. We want you kind of within that appropriate posture throughout, because when you have to correct, it can create inconsistency there. The other thing we look for is what we refer to as early extension. So I'm going to go back here, and we're going to draw a line, I'm going to say here. Oops. And what we want is, when you do this for a good hip rotation, we want to make sure when we go, that left hip crosses the line, and you stay on the line during the entire swing. And so you're doing well there. And then now you see that left hip cross over the line. So that means your pelvis is rotating well. You're leaving enough space for your hands on the downswing. So that's actually good that you don't have that, because a lot of people actually have that early extension piece. And then the last thing is just to make sure you're not going over the top. So we draw, sorry, we change lines here. So we have you go back, 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 and then here. So basically on the downswing, we want you following in, your hands falling in between those lines. And so you can see once you get to the waist area, you're there through impact. And so you're good. All right. So the main thing we're seeing on the front view, the casting, the scooping, and then maybe a little bit of loss of posture, or at the very end, you're standing up. So I'm going to switch over to your 2D view, or excuse me, 3D. And so if you look here at the bottom left, this is what we refer to as your X factor. So just how much change you're getting between the upper body and lower body. And if you kind of look left and look right on your backswing, so you see you're going back. And so if you look right here, your hips and shoulders really kind of turning at the same space, maybe starting to get a little separation here. And then what we're going to see is you kind of have this going up, down, and then back up again. And so you get here, shoulders and hips are about the same. And then at the very end, we start to see that separation, all right? So hips in a certain plane, shoulders in a certain plane, and that's where it goes down again. But I also think that's where you're slightly standing up. And so like I say, even though you correct, that can create some inconsistency. So here, and it's very subtle. And I also want you to let just kind of the top of your head, actually, we'll go back to the other one. If I can find it. All right, let's see if we see it on this one. And so just kind of look at the top of your head and then look at that darker line. So as you go back, all right, here, and right there, see how there might be like a little standing up once you get to that top, trying to get that additional coil. Like I say, even though, and then look at that distance you dropping, which is okay, but I'm just wondering if that's creating some potential inconsistency within your shot. And then it may be And that distance from here to here, maybe it causing you to do the casting and the scooping because your body is adjusting. So it's feel like, all right, I was up here. This is how I'm going to swing. Now I've dropped, but your body may feel like it needs to stand, adjust a little bit because of that height difference. So not saying that that's the cause of that, but that's something we should consider. All right. So here, again, head pretty good. But once you get there, you raise. And then, yes, you recover lower than on your take back. And so could that be throwing off the timing just ever so slightly? Back to the 3D piece. And so this graph at the top left, I'm going to zoom it. All right. And so what we're looking for, the orange line represents your pelvis. The red line represents your arm/club. And then the green line is your trunk. And so sequencing wise, what we want to see, whether the peak goes up or down. So here it goes down, which is perfectly fine. We do want the orange to peak first. All right. So your hips are firing first, but then we actually want the green to peak, and then we want the red to peak. All right. So it should go in the order of pelvis, green, the thorax, and then the hip. So what we're seeing is inappropriate transfer of power. So pretty much what it's saying is you have some power in your hips, and it's just kind of going to the arms, and the thorax is not really involved. Now, this is consistent with your movement screen. And so you were able to do pelvic rotation, but you had difficulties separating your hips from your shoulders. And so when I grabbed your shoulders, your pelvic rotation improved. And then the same when we checked your thoracic rotation with your upper body, when I grabbed your hips, your rotation improved. So you have the ability to do those motions, hence the pelvis going first, but you're having a difficulty separating those two. And so when you go on the backswing, you create a coil. So backswing, you create a coil, and really you create it kind of here to there, as we were saying. But then what we want those hips firing first, which you do a good job of. But then your arms catch up and actually go past your thorax. And that may explain this piece here, where it almost looks like, how do I want to say that? And maybe just your arms are just kind of getting ahead, and then you're adjusting by maybe standing up a little bit, or you're adjusting. Actually, that's probably what it is, because your arms are going so fast, they catch up with your pelvis. It may be causing you to compensate, and that's why you're casting and scooping at this point. All right. Yeah, almost like your thorax is just behind both your hips. It's supposed to be behind the hips, but it looks like it's also behind your arms. And so I think you're compensating by casting and scooping. So if we can work on getting that separation from your upper body and lower body, you'll get a greater transfer of power. Let me correct that. So you'll get better sequencing, which creates a better transfer of power, and that'll turn around, be more distance on your shots there. All right. But the goal is we got to learn to get those hips to move independently from the thorax and vice versa. And then I think if you can get those fixed, I think it will naturally kind of help with the casting and scooping, and then also the loss of posture. So I think most of the issues we're seeing here are based off your movements, and I think the technique, your efficiency will improve once we improve your movements. All right. Well, thank you for letting me work with you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.